had just finished placing the last framed photo on the shelf, me in a graduation gown, standing alone in front of the courthouse. It was the only picture I'd let myself display in this new apartment. My space. My rules. For the first time in my life, no one else's voice echoed through the hallways. Just me, the ticking of a quiet wall clock, and the low hum of the heater kicking in against the November chill. I took one last look around. Everything was in its place. Clean counters. Folded blankets. A candle burning softly by the window. I locked the door behind me, took a breath, and headed to the family house across town. Thanksgiving. The word carried a weight heavier than the turkey Mom roasted every year. The second I stepped through the door, chaos swallowed me. My older sister's laugh was already bouncing off the walls. Her perfume hit first, then her voice, loud, dramatic, the center of every room she entered. I smiled, but it didn't touch my eyes. She hugged me, too tight, too long. You look functional, she said, with that signature smirk she wore like lip gloss. Dinner was already on the table. Turkey, stuffing, the usual passive-aggressive tension simmering between cranberry sauce and mashed potatoes. I took my seat across from her, nodded at the rest of the family, and did what I always did, kept quiet and observed. Then it happened. Halfway through the meal, while everyone was mid-bite or politely ignoring the awkward silence, she dropped it like a bomb. "Oh, by the way," she said, swirling wine in her glass, "I'm moving in with Maddie." Forks paused midair. Dad coughed. Mom blinked like she hadn't heard right. I froze. She kept going, like this was already settled. Her new place is perfect. I mean, she barely uses the second room anyway. And my lease is up. It just makes sense. Laughter erupted around the table. My aunt chuckled. "You're serious?" someone asked. She didn't flinch. Completely. "I already told Brandon, he's fine with it. I'll start moving stuff Monday." My mouth stayed shut, but my heart started pounding. I glanced at Mom. Nothing. No shock. No protest. She reached for the gravy like this wasn't a violation of everything I'd built in the last 6 months. Dad just shifted in his seat, wiped his mouth with a napkin. Not a word. They expected me to go along with it, again. I'd signed the lease alone. Took on a second job to make rent work. Stayed up past midnight budgeting on a spreadsheet. And not once had I said a word to them, because deep down, I knew, if they knew, it would no longer be mine. She leaned over to pass the rolls and whispered, "You'll love it. I'll even bring that lamp you like." That lamp belonged to me. She had borrowed it 2 years ago and never gave it back. The rest of dinner continued like someone hadn't just announced a home invasion. Casual chat. More wine. Football highlights. I sat there in silence, chewing through resentment and cornbread, my fingers tightening around the fork. The therapist's voice echoed in my head, "You teach people how to treat you." Another memory followed, Christmas 2 years ago. She'd shown up unannounced, dumped her suitcase in my room, said, "Mom said it's fine," and stayed for 3 weeks. Left me sleeping on the couch in my own apartment. Not this time. I looked up, smiled slightly, and said, "I'll need to think about that." She blinked. "Think about what?" "About you moving in." A beat passed. Then she laughed. "You're joking, right? We're family." "I'm not joking," I said, calmly. She scoffed, looked around like she needed backup. "Seriously? You've always said I could crash with you." Crash. For a night. Not move in. The room went quiet for a second, then picked up again like background noise turning back on. Dad muttered something about not making a scene. Mom said, she's just stressed. It's been a busy year. My sister smirked, looked right through me, and announced to her cousin, well, I guess I'm getting a roommate. Isn't that cute? Like college again. I smiled politely, but inside, I was already plotting. Dinner ended. I helped with the dishes, made small talk, kept the peace. I didn't mention it again. Didn't need to. Her performance spoke louder than words. Later that night, while coats were being grabbed and goodbyes muttered, I noticed her hovering near Mom's purse. Casual. Natural. Then her fingers slipped inside and pulled something small, silver, my apartment's spare key. She turned, caught my eye. Froze for half a second. Smiled like she always did. Just grabbing gum, she said, waving the key before shoving it into her jacket. I said nothing. But I saw everything. That key wasn't in there by chance. She must have taken it days ago. Planted it. Planned it. She always did this, act first, deal with the fallout later. Ask forgiveness, never permission. I stood by the door, watching the family file out. Her laugh faded down the porch steps. I waited. Breathed. Closed the door slowly. Then, when the house was quiet again, I walked over to Mom's purse, reached in, and felt around. And there it was, the backup spare. I took it. Mine now. Mine again. The ride home was silent except for the low hum of tires on pavement. My fingers curled tightly around the spare key in my coat pocket. I could still feel the slight warmth from my mother's purse, where it had sat until I took it back. A part of me wanted to believe maybe betrayal hadn't meant anything by it. But deep down, I knew better. People like her didn't ask. They assumed. They acted. Inside the apartment, I double-locked the door, checked the windows, then checked the locks again. I stood still in the middle of the living room, my space, letting the quiet wrap around me. The kind of quiet you don't notice until someone threatens to take it away. I kicked off my shoes, dropped my bag on the floor, and stared at the couch. Everything felt tainted now. Like she'd already been here. I pulled out my phone, typed a message to Leah, an old college friend I hadn't talked to in a while, then deleted it. I didn't want sympathy. I just needed clarity. Instead, I scrolled through my call log, saw Mom's name, and locked the screen. I wasn't ready. I tossed the key on the table and went to bed without brushing my teeth. Sleep didn't come easy. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Brielle laughing at dinner, like she'd won something. Like I was the punchline to a joke I hadn't agreed to be in. Morning brought no relief. My phone buzzed just after 8. It was Mom. I let it ring twice before answering. Good morning, sweetheart, she said in that sing-song voice she used when she wanted something. Did you sleep okay? We were just saying how lovely it was to have everyone together. I mumbled something noncommittal and headed toward the kitchen, still groggy. Oh, she added, as if remembering something trivial, just let us know when Brielle can move in. She said you already agreed. I stopped cold. What? I said, slowly. Well, she told us you were fine with it. That it was all settled. No, I said, trying to keep my voice even. I never said yes. There was a pause, the kind that speaks volumes. Well, you didn't say no either, sweetheart, she said, her tone now coated in that thin layer of condescension I remembered from high school. You always find a way to make things work. It hit me then, how often maybe had become yes in our house. How often silence was treated like compliance. I was trained into it, shaped like clay by years of not wanting to be difficult. I need to go, I said, and ended the call before she could say more. My hands were shaking. Not out of fear. Out of clarity. This wasn't just betrayal anymore. I made coffee without tasting it. Sat on the couch in my pajamas, staring at the wall. My apartment still had that half-finished feeling, frames leaning against walls, a pile of unopened mail on the counter. It was supposed to be a new beginning. But now it felt like a battleground. A ding. A text. Jason. Brielle's boyfriend. Can't wait to see the new place. We're both so excited. My stomach dropped. I replied, what new place? He sent back a photo, cardboard boxes stacked neatly in a trunk. Labels in thick marker, our kitchen, B's shoes, shared bathroom. A few seconds later, a voice message followed. Hey! Bree said you were totally cool with it. Thanks again, Maddie. She's really lucky to have a sister like you. I put the phone down. Slowly. Like if I moved too fast, something would snap. They had already packed. She had told people. I wasn't just being manipulated, I was being erased from my own story. Rewritten without permission. I opened my laptop, hands still trembling. Logged into the tenant portal. Pulled up my lease. Guest policies, subletting clauses, noise ordinances. I highlighted lines. I started drafting an email to the property manager. I didn't know exactly what I would say. But I knew it had to start now. I needed leverage before she stepped foot through my door. I stood, looked around again. The apartment felt smaller now. Like it was already shrinking to make room for her. My eyes landed on a quote hanging near the kitchen, "No" is a complete sentence. I had bought it during a clearance sale at some thrift store in Cleveland. At the time, I thought it was just cute. Now, it felt like armor. I grabbed a notebook and scribbled down a title, Things That Are Mine. Under it, I wrote, my apartment. My key. My peace. My silence. I didn't cry. I wanted to. But instead, I just stared out the window, watching nothing in particular. A memory floated up, something a coworker said during a messy team meeting last spring, people only take what you let them. I added that to the list. Then I circled Sunday on the calendar. That would be the day I gave my real answer. No more waiting. No more letting things slide. That afternoon, I cleared the hallway shelf. Not for her. For me. I set up a small camera, one I used when I used to pet sit. Just in case. Plugged it in, aimed it at the front door. I printed the lease, highlighted the parts that mattered, and clipped it together. I sat back down at the kitchen table, opened my email draft, and stared at the cursor blinking. Finally, I typed, "Hello, I'd like to inquire about rules concerning unauthorized guests and long-term visitors." My finger hovered above send. And then, without ceremony, I clicked it. Yesterday's quiet unraveling still buzzed in my mind as I polished the coffee table and stacked the mail into one neat pile. I wanted order. I wanted calm. For once, I thought I might have both. Around noon, the knock at the door startled me, Mom and Dad with grocery bags, bright-eyed and casual. They were here to help me settle into independence, or so they claimed. I swallowed the unease before it could show. They stepped into my living room, Mom rearranging throw pillows like she'd lived here, Dad hovering, avoiding my gaze. I served coffee while my gut screamed. "We just thought you'd appreciate a bit of company," Mom said. That warm tone hid the weight of moving decisions I hadn't made. We sat around the kitchen island, Brielle nowhere in sight, but her presence hovered anyway. Mom talked about family helping each other, cast in broad, generous strokes. It was all charm until the sweetness edged toward guilt. "Your sister's been through a rough patch," she said, stirring lightly. "She just needs a place to breathe." I cleared my throat. "She has her own apartment, Mom." The words felt sharp in the stale air. Dad intervened quietly, "Just for a little while, sweetheart." My blood cooled, not comfort but warning. I didn't flinch. I've lived in the background long enough. Lunch arrived, salad, turkey leftovers, polite conversation. But under the hum of conversation, I heard the gears turning. Plates clinked, silverware shifted, eyes flicked to the door. Mid-meal, Mom dropped it, "We've got movers coming tomorrow morning for Brielle's things." Time froze. I pressed my fork into the plate, felt wood under my fingers like a lifeline. Dad's voice, low, "We'll help her move, don't worry." My response landed quietly but heavy, "You should have told me before assuming anything." Tears sprung in Mom's eyes, an act I knew well. "You're turning your back on family," she said, voice quivering. The room tightened around me, betrayal unraveling like a scarf. I excused myself, locked the bathroom door, and stared into the mirror. Reflection, I had been the peacekeeper for years. My voice faded into the background while others made decisions out loud. My therapist once said, "Boundaries aren't walls, they're doors with locks. You decide who enters." I thought of every time my comfort took a second chair. I whispered to the silent room, "They can cry, but I'm done apologizing for existing." Back at the table I found quiet replaced expectation. I thanked them for lunch, but then stated it firmly, "Please don't bring Brielle's things here." Mom opened her mouth, stunned. I held it there. "If she moves in, I move out." Dad reached toward me, but I slid past him. They left in silence, bags still in the entryway. Once the door clicked behind them, the quiet arrived, and I sat alone in it, heavy yet liberating. Sunday morning began with a buzz on my phone. One text, from Jason, "Can't wait for Monday, feels like the start of something amazing." No emoji. Just that. I stared at it, sitting cross-legged on the rug with my coffee cooling in my hands. The word "or" wasn't there this time, but it didn't need to be. I felt it anyway. The unspoken certainty. The assumption. The theft of space without so much as a knock. A part of me flashed back to a conversation I had back in college. A mentor told me once, "Don't ask permission, ask forgiveness." She meant it in the context of risk-taking, of pushing career boundaries. But Brielle had taken that phrase and made it a lifestyle. I paced my apartment. It was clean, quiet. Mine. And yet, I suddenly felt like I was squatting in someone else's space. As if every surface whispered, "Temporary." I paused by the shelf I'd planned for my books. Still empty. I thought of a quote I'd scribbled on a sticky note and taped to the fridge months ago, Gloria Steinem, "People aren't free until they learn to ask for what they deserve." Today, I'd ask. No more delay. No more quiet. I grabbed my bag and left to meet Kale. The cafe was a quiet spot off the river walk. We sat outside, my lease agreement spread across the small metal table between us. Kale's expression was calm, but his eyes were scanning. "This clause here," he said, tapping the document, "confirms exclusive tenancy." You did your homework. I nodded. Relief mixed with anxiety. Because knowing something legally didn't always mean your world respected it emotionally. Kale leaned back. Funny thing is, I found a duplicate version floating around your tenant portal. It had a blank line added under your signature. Betrayal Voss. Just sitting there, waiting to be filled. I didn't even flinch. I just stared. You sure you didn't give someone access to your account? No, I said quietly. I sure didn't. Kale didn't press further. He didn't need to. I understood what was happening. It wasn't just about an apartment anymore. It was about authorship. About the right to write the next sentence of my life without someone hijacking the pen. My phone buzzed again. An email. Subject line, delivery confirmation, Monday morning. I looked at Kale. They're not even trying to hide it anymore, I said. It's already in motion. He folded the lease back up and handed it to me. Then it's time to make your move first. Monday came with gray skies and a breeze that carried the faint smell of wet concrete. I walked through the lobby of my building and saw them, 2 delivery trucks idling near the curb. Inside the hallway, boxes were already stacked. Betrayal Voss, Unit 1204. Labeled like this was just another Amazon drop-off. Casual. Decided. Done. I paused. Not long. Just enough to notice how no one else seemed to care. As if it was normal for someone's life to be overwritten without a second glance. I kept walking. But I hit record on my phone and whispered into it, if I ignore this now, I'll be ignored forever. I reached the elevator. As it climbed, I opened my lease app and double-checked the co-tenant section. Still blank. Still mine. I stepped into my apartment and set the papers down with care. The echo of my own footsteps sounded louder than usual. Not lonely, just clear. That night, I sat in my armchair and drafted an email to my landlord. My apartment is not available for others to move into. Please confirm receipt of this clarification. I didn't ask for approval. I didn't ask for understanding. A few minutes later, my phone rang. Mom. Her voice came through sweet, almost lazy. We just thought you'd be generous. That's all. I let the silence stretch. Then I said, generosity isn't automatic. Respect is earned. Another ping. Brielle's text, so excited to decorate our space. I didn't respond. I set the phone down. The bookshelf corner caught my eye. Still bare. And yet no longer disappointing. Just honest. I leaned back, picked up a book, and finished the quote I'd bookmarked weeks ago. You decide who gets the chair at your table. And tonight, for the first time in a long while, I wasn't setting an extra place. I haven't won. Not yet. But I've stopped moving backward. Tuesday started like any other weekday. I was making coffee, laptop already open on the kitchen island, my planner to the right. For the first time in days, there was a strange stillness inside me. Not peace exactly, but the calm that comes when you've stopped second-guessing yourself. I reviewed my agenda, preparing for a 9:30 Zoom call. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I thought, maybe this fight was finally over. Maybe silence meant they got the message. At 8:12 a.m., my phone buzzed with a push notification from the building app. Front lobby, incoming visitor. I tapped the screen. And there they were. My parents. My sister. 2 unfamiliar men, movers. Cart dolly, folded blankets, clipboard. All smiles. The coffee mug trembled slightly in my hand as I set it down. Not fear. Not surprise. Just that sick, flat recognition. This is what ambush looks like when disguised as family. I didn't buzz them in. I didn't have to. By the time I reached the door, they were already in the elevator. I stood there in my socks, breath tight but steady. Not because I expected them, but because I was ready this time. The elevator dinged. I opened the door before they could knock. Brielle stepped out first, hair tied up, sunglasses perched like armor. She gestured behind her as if directing a movie set. Living room stuff first, then wheel. No one moves anything in, I said, stepping into the hallway and pulling the door behind me. She blinked, laughed, arms crossed. Are you serious? It's just a couch. The movers hesitated mid-step, one already holding a rolled rug under his arm. My mother appeared next, voice sugary. Honey, we just thought we'd surprise you. Make it easy. You don't surprise people by taking over their homes, I said. My father hovered near the back, eyes darting between us. Silent. A neighbor peeked from across the hall. Then another. No one said anything. Just the kind of tension that drips down walls. I turned to the movers. Do you have a signed agreement from me? They both looked at each other. One of them muttered, we were told this was a family relocation. You were misled, I said. You are not authorized to enter. This apartment has one leaseholder. Me. Brielle rolled her eyes. God, you are so dramatic. It's a couch. Grow up. No, I said, voice steady. I'm finally being specific. She opened her mouth, but I reached into my bag and pulled out printed copies of my lease. I handed one to each mover. This clause here, Section 4C. No co-tenants, no unauthorized guests past 14 days. This is enforceable. My mother's smile had disappeared. I'm saying this one time, and one time only, I continued. If anything crosses that threshold today, you will find all of it, including my belongings, gone tomorrow. I will terminate my lease, and I will press charges for trespassing. And I will not lose. My father stepped forward. Let's not escalate. This isn't worth a family fight. I looked at him. I've been fighting silently for 30 years. Today, you're going to hear it out loud. There was a beat of silence. No sound but the low hum of the elevator resetting. Brielle scoffed. You're really going to ruin Christmas over this? I nodded. If it means saving the rest of my life, yes. The movers shifted, one stepping back. Ma'am, without paperwork, we can't. Thank you, I said. They turned. Slowly. Awkwardly. But they turned. My parents didn't speak again. They didn't hug. Didn't argue. Just followed behind Brielle as she marched toward the elevator, jaw tight, eyes forward. I stood there until the doors closed. Only then did I go back inside. I locked the door. Slid down against it. Let the silence sit. My hands were shaking, not with fear, but with the adrenaline leaving my body. It was like coming down from a sprint that lasted a decade. I opened my laptop. Email from my landlord. We've received your notice. Confirmed, no one is authorized except you. I exhaled. Quietly. A smile tugged at the corner of my mouth. Maybe this time, I wasn't the crazy one. Maybe I was just the first to say no. I closed the email and opened a new document. Top of the page, emergency relocation plan. Not because I was running. Because I wanted options. And this time, they'd be mine. I had planned for a quiet afternoon of work, nothing dramatic. I arrived at my desk, logged into my remote session, and opened the deck I had spent weeks building. Promotion on the line. Months of late nights, tweaking visuals, rehearsing slides in front of my bedroom mirror. I believed I was stepping into a new chapter, one not defined by my sister's shadow or family expectations. But then I clicked edit and the file looked like a ransom note, audio missing, slides rearranged, titles blank. My breath caught. I glanced at the access logs. Someone edited it at 3:17 a.m. Guest Wi-Fi login Breeze iPad. My heart sank. This wasn't a glitch. It was a message. 20 minutes until the presentation. I fumbled to rebuild, reuse a backup, mask the mess. My coworkers' faces on Zoom flickered. One typed in chat, "She's not ready." I held my cursor, jaw tight. Every eye watching, but hearing nothing of my story. I finished the call, hands trembling, voice steady. My boss's praise was polite, but empty. Inside, I felt betrayed, by the sister who assumed rights, by the ceiling that pressed down, by the quiet I'd accepted so many years. Later, I cracked open the logs and found trail. Guest login. Edits. My folders messed with. I buried frustration in screenshots, labeled folders evidence personal boundaries. I called my tech-savvy friend and asked for encryption and multi-factor locks. I drafted an email to my boss, technical issues impacted presentation, I will ensure full control of future documents. No blame, just clarity. That night I changed the locks, reset the Wi-Fi, started a journal of every interaction that felt like invasion. At work I pulled aside colleagues and said, "I value your feedback, I'm rebuilding from this." Their nods, their honest words, they counted. Because I realized, I don't have to make anyone look bad. I just have to refuse feeling small. There was no fanfare. No big reveal. But when I sat in my apartment, lights dimmed, laptop closed, I could feel something shift. Not relief, not victory, but definition. I wasn't crumbling. I was forming. And for the first time, I was the author of what comes next. The email came mid-morning. Family meeting, please attend tonight, subject line crisp, sender, Dad. No explanation, just a time, 6:30. I stared at it longer than I needed to, because I already knew what it meant. This wasn't concern. This wasn't dialogue. This was a staged intervention, their script, not mine. I printed out my lease again, highlighted the clauses. Saved the Wi-Fi logs to my phone, organized screenshots of betrayals posts, the delivery records. I'd learned that when they say it's about family, it's really about control. At 6:29, I opened the door. My living room looked like a set. My parents were already seated. Brielle, perched on the armrest, smug like she'd just won a pageant. The moving boxes were positioned like props. The movers were gone, but the implication hung heavy. Dad cleared his throat. "We need to talk about the apartment situation." It wasn't a conversation. It was court. I sat slowly, opened my folder. I didn't yell. I didn't flinch. I laid out the lease, showed the digital trails, read aloud the timestamps. Brielle's name never appeared on anything official. Her signature nowhere. Her rights? Manufactured. I looked to my father for acknowledgement. He looked down. Not at the papers, at the floor. My mother jumped in like she always does. Your sister has been through a lot lately. She just needs some support. I raised a hand. Not to silence her, but to center the moment. Dad finally spoke, voice low. I didn't want to believe this could happen in my house. That sentence said everything. Not the apartment. His house. His rules. His silence. There it was. I breathed in, measured. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. I looked at Brielle. Her smile cracked, just slightly. I've avoided fights. But I've drawn boundaries. And I won't keep both. Then, like clockwork, Brielle pulled out her phone. I wasn't going to say this, but since you're making it public. She opened Instagram, held it up. A post. A photo of her standing in my living room, captioned, "So excited to call this place mine. Big sis helping little sis." I heard my mother gasp. Dad froze. I stared at the screen. I didn't feel rage. I felt insulted, like my life had become her marketing campaign. I stood, calm and clear. You didn't ask. You took. Brielle crossed her arms. It's family. We share. Sharing requires permission. What you did? That's theft by assumption. I handed the screenshot to Dad. His eyes narrowed, mouth tight. I stepped forward, steady. If this continues, I walk away. From all of it. I won't trade peace of mind for peace in this room. No one spoke. The power shifted. I could feel it. Later that night, after they left, I sat on the floor. Not crying. Not shaking. Just still. The air felt mine again. I saved the screenshot, sent it to my lawyer contact. My phone buzzed, Dad's text, "We need space. Call when you're ready." I stood, walked to the front door, turned the key. Silence. And then, like it had been waiting all along, I said aloud, "I am done shrinking for others." The war wasn't over. But the ground had changed. I walked into the lobby and stopped cold. A news van idling outside. Reporters milling. On the wall, a bright placard reading "Resident Move-In, Brielle Voss, Unit 1204. I held my phone tight in my hand, screenshots forwarded by Kale, the lease, delivery logs, the empty signature line for my sister. My heart beat hard, and for the first time I didn't feel small. This wasn't just family drama anymore, this was public. I took a deep breath and reminded myself of Brené Brown's words, "Vulnerability is not winning or losing, it's having the courage to show up and be seen." Tonight, I showed up. And I would be seen. I cleared my throat in the lobby, lifted the folder of evidence, and said loudly, "This is my apartment. I have proof." The landlord appeared from behind the reception desk, shifting his weight. I stepped forward, laid out the email chains, the lease versions, the delivery tracker, the Wi-Fi logs. Tenants stopped at the doorway, whispers rising. A microphone wiggled from a reporter's hand. The placard was peeled off slowly, like peeling away the lie. I looked at Brielle through the truck window, open-mouthed. And I felt something in me unshackle. "You don't move into someone's home because you assume you belong there," I said to the camera. My voice steady. No tremor. The lobby lights stayed on. The van cameras stayed rolling. This was not an accident. It was clarity. And it was real. Later that afternoon I invited my design clients over, still calmer than I felt, but sure. The blueprint I had framed hung on the wall, Project, Wrenwood View Living Room, by Delara Wren. A client looked up and asked, "Is that yours?" I nodded and said, "Yes. I built that from scratch." I told how I designed, sourced, installed every detail while the world assumed I was busy cleaning up someone else's mess. I told how Brielle tried to post it as hers once. The clients applauded. Soft, genuine. My phone buzzed. Father's text, "We need to talk tomorrow." The rise in the evening air felt like affirmation, not from them, but from me. As dusk wrapped the lobby, I passed by the now blank wall where the placard had been. "Just welcome residents" printed. The emptiness wasn't loss, it was space I filled. I wasn't just reclaiming a home. I was reclaiming my story. That night, I held my laptop open. I filmed a short video, me by the window, San Antonio lights shimmering behind me. "To anyone who told you you're too quiet, too easy, this is your voice now," I began. I posted the proof documents, the design photo, the removed placard, all with the caption, "Not yours to occupy. Yours to build." The comments came flooding in, women older than me saying "I see you," neighbors saying "Thank you for saying it," friends sharing their own stories. And then Brielle's text popped up, "This isn't over." Gently, I typed back, "Yes it is, my version starts now." I kettled the moment, not with vengeance, but with truth. I received the landlord's confirmation email, no co-tenant authorized on the lease. No celebration. No gloating. Just quiet power. I closed the laptop, sat in my living room, the place I built, the space that stayed mine. I exhaled. And the silence around me felt different, not like emptiness, but like foundation. The war isn't done. But the table has been reset. I woke up with the light already pouring through the blinds, casting long streaks across the hardwood floor. It was quiet. Not just quiet, still. No background tension, no second-guessing footsteps in the hall. Just mourning. I padded to the kitchen, barefoot, letting the floorboards creak under me without apology. The coffee took longer than usual to brew, but I didn't rush it. I sat near the window where I used to sit curled up, trying to disappear. Now, I sat upright. I opened my journal, flipped past the messy pages of fights and lists and doubts. Today, I wrote, I didn't just claim my apartment. I reclaimed my boundaries. Then I paused. Looked up. Took it in. Healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means learning what's worth holding on to, and what's not mine to carry anymore. My phone buzzed. A message from Aunt Lorraine, "Proud of you. Thanksgiving might have been chaos, but you made your own table." I smiled. Then I laughed, just a little. I thought of that quote from Maya Angelou. I can be changed by what happens to me. But I refuse to be reduced by it. That line had lived in my head for years. This time, it lived in my bones. Around mid-morning, I slipped into jeans, pulled a light sweater over my tank, and headed out. The park was just a few blocks away, nothing fancy, but it had a quiet walking trail and one of those old metal jungle gyms that never seemed to rust. Families were out. Kids falling and getting up again. Dogs tugging at leashes. That murmur of real life going on, with or without anyone's permission. I found an empty bench tucked under a tree and sat there for a long while. Thought about how many holidays I had spent at tables where I didn't belong. Trying to keep peace no one really wanted. Trying to protect people who wouldn't lift a finger for me. A little girl passed by on a pink bike, her dad running behind her. She wobbled, almost fell, and laughed. He laughed too. I caught myself smiling. Families can be beautiful. They just aren't always the ones you're born into. I opened the Notes app on my phone and drafted a blog post, short, honest. Something about the weight of obligation during the holidays. About how boundaries can be love too. I hit publish. Comments started coming in before I even stood up. One from a woman in Ohio, "You told my story." Another from someone in Minnesota, "I thought I was the only one." I didn't need to fix broken people. I just needed to protect the whole version of me. By late afternoon, I was back home folding laundry when my phone buzzed again. Voicemail. From Brielle. I stood at the kitchen counter listening. No rant. No passive-aggressive digs. Just a few sentences, quiet, almost careful. I thought I deserved your space because I never made my own. That's not your fault. That was it. No, I'm sorry. No excuses either. Just her truth, I guess. I didn't cry. Didn't rage. I just stood still and let it pass through me. I typed back, "I hope you find your own keys one day. This door's closed, but your path is open." Sometimes, closure isn't about hugs or reunions. Sometimes it's just that stillness after a storm, where you realize you're not mad anymore. You're just done. And that's enough. As the sun dipped behind the rooftops, I lit candles around the apartment and started prepping for Friendsgiving. Not some big production. Just a few people I actually wanted in my space. Kale brought dessert. My coworker brought a casserole that barely made it through the oven ride. Aunt Lorraine came with cranberry salad no one touched, but she smiled the whole night, so it didn't matter. We laughed. Ate off mismatched plates. The conversations didn't twist into landmines. Nobody performed. Nobody competed. Midway through dinner, someone raised a glass and said, "To choosing family." I felt the lump in my throat rise. Didn't swallow it back. Just let it sit. I had set the table. I had picked the guest list. And for once, the whole room felt warm, not from tension, but from absence of it. After dinner, I placed a small ceramic turkey by the window. Next to it, a framed print, "Here I stand." Later that night, one of the younger girls I worked with pulled me aside near the sink. She said, "I'm struggling with my sister. I don't know what to do." I looked at her, not as a victim, but as someone who'd walked through fire and still smelled like herself. I said, "Sometimes, love means drawing a line." And I meant it.